Hi! On this very cold day
Yes.
in December of 2009. And I'm going to begin by asking you to do what we ask everyone to do. Would you identify yourself? What's your full name?
My full name is Rosemary Moriarty.
And who gave you that name, Rosemary?
My parents.
Your mom and dad both had a say in that, huh?
They did. It was their grandparents. So it's my great grandparents' mothers. One was Rose, one was Mary, Maria. So I became Rosemary.
Did you know them?
No, I didn't know them. I knew my grandparents,
Yes.
but I didn't
But you
know.
didn't know your great grandparents?
No.
Where were your great grandparents born?
They were all born in Italy, and two of my grandparents were born in Italy also. The other two were born here.
Was there a time, did they come together separately? I mean, did they come to this country separately, or did they come about the same time?
Well, my grandparents, first my mother's father came over from Italy.
Where in Italy was he?
They came from Naples.
Uh-huh.
And the story is that he knew my uncle, one of my uncles, and it was my grandmother's brother. His name was Pasquale. So anyway, my grandfather asked him if his sister was still around in Naples. She was 15 at the time. So then my grandmother came over, and they ended up getting married, and they had 5 children.
So the families knew one another back in Naples.
Yes, they did. Yes. So in fact, we went to Ellis Island and we saw their name on the ship and all that. So that was very exciting. It really was.
So you didn't know your great grandparents, but you knew your both grandparents.
Yes.
What were they like?
Well, I remember. Well, I have to change that a little bit. My mother's father died very young. His name was Antonio. He died very young, and he's the one I didn't know because I was the youngest of 6 children. He was, I believe, 56. I don't remember all of this.
Yeah.
There are other people in the family who may know more of the dates and so on. So I remember him being a fairly young man, and when he first came here, he taught himself to speak English and read and write. My grandmother really didn't learn that much of it. She still spoke broken English when she died at 87, But my grandfather was, they always thought he was some kind of from aristocratic family or something, because he was born in an orphanage.
Oh.
Yes, yeah. So anyway, he he had a grocery store. He did shoemaking. He did all the things the Italian immigrants did in those days.
Where did your grandparents settle?
In Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn.
Yes,
What
they
part
did.
of Brooklyn do you know?
They were in near where the Gowanus Canal was. I'm not sure exactly what that area is. So
Canarsie?
No, they were further in than Canarsie.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's far back too.
I'm sure there are other people who could remember that, better than I can.
But he was a grocer. He was an independent businessman.
And he was. It was amazing.
What year roughly would this have been that he went into business, or they came?
Oh my! I wasn't born till the 40s, and this must have been the 20s.
Okay.
I would think. Yes.
Okay. If that be the case, those were some very difficult times too.
Mm-hmm.
You were born in the 40s. You were born during the war years. You have no recollection of the Depression because you came after that.
Yes.
But I'm sure your parents told you stories about it.
Mm-hmm. They did. Like. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's come back to you. When were you born exactly?
I was born February 25th, 1946 in Mary Immaculate Hospital in Jamaica, Queens. And at the time, my parents were living in, I guess it was East New York area. And then they bought a house. I was 3 months old. This is the story they've told me. Then they bought their first house. And we lived in Ozone Park, Tudor Village in Ozone Park. And it was a wonderful place. It was a 3-story brick house. And it was always a home. You know, it was that type of thing. I was the youngest of 6. Actually 7. The one before me died at 10 days old. He was very ill. So there were 6 of us. And
what's your earliest memory from that time of your life?
I remember as far back as 3 years of age. I do. There are many things that happened when I was 3 that I remember being at, you know, certain things and seeing things. And so.
Well, can you tell us one thing that you remember?
I remember when my grandmother, my father's mother, died. And they brought me into the funeral parlor. And I remember my father saying, come and say goodbye to Grandma. And he picked me up, and I'll never forget it. As long as I live, he held me up, and I kissed her right here on the forehead. And that was one of the recollections. And
it's a beautiful memory, because some families put a fear into children of somebody who is deceased. Mm-hmm. And clearly that was not the case in your...
No, I wasn't frightened, you know. Surprisingly, you know. But,
wonderful. Wonderful. Tell me about your brothers and sisters.
My brothers and sisters. Well, I have to start with my oldest brother that you'll probably know. My brother Anthony, who we always called Anthony, was known in Brentwood as Tony. You know, Tony Felicio, his name was. And, sorry, he's my hero. Always was, you know. And one of the biggest recollections I always said about my brother is that when he was a young man, about 18, he and a bunch of friends took me to the Bronx Zoo. And I remember being 3 years old, and we were in the Bronx Zoo, and I was thrilled, you know, because I had all this attention, and of course my big brother. And we went into the ape house, and I remember being so frightened, but I remember being picked up and protected, you know, that type of thing. And we always had a special bond, the oldest and the youngest. For some reason in the family, we were close, you know, we could talk to each other and stuff. So he was a very special man.
He was.
Really,
and
truly.
He gave a greater part of his life to the community of Brentwood.
Yes.
For all his dedication, for all the things that he did.
Yeah.
And was Tony the closest to you in age? Or was he?
No, he's actually 15 years older than I am.
Okay.
Yeah. So my closest sister is 4 years after me. Well, there was one in between. Joseph had died. But I had my brother Anthony. Then I have a sister Louise. I don't know if you want ages or anything like that. Actually, my brother probably now would be about 79 if he were alive, because I'm 60. I'll be 64. So, and then I have a sister Louise who's 76. My sister Pat died when she was 62. My brother Frank, they all called him Duke. He's someone that's difficult to talk about because he's like the black sheep of the family. I don't know if this is allowed to be on tape, but it's there. If you want to cut it out, you can. Unfortunately, he had my father's name, my father Frank, and he was nothing like my father or anybody else in the family. And then I have my sister Teresa, and then myself. So,
well, he went his own way. He did his
own
way.
Yes, yeah.
You were therefore one of the oldest in the family, because the oldest child did not survive. So you were then the next child in the birth order of your family.
I'm the last child.
Oh, the last child.
I'm the last. I'm the youngest.
Misunderstood.
Yeah, I'm the youngest of 6. My brother Anthony was the oldest, and I was the youngest.
So did that...
I am like the oldest, though, in the family.
How is that?
Insofar as, it sounds very strange, but people look to me for... It was always my brother and myself that people would ask things about, like decisions that had to be made in the family. We were the ones, more or less, that people would come to. for whatever reason that is, maybe because I'm a take charge kind of person, they know that. Well, that's what it is. Yes, and I've been a caregiver for many of my family.
Oh, did you have a nickname growing up?
Roro.
Who gave you that one?
My family. They just called me Roro, or the baby. You know, when I was in my 40s, they were still introducing me. Oh, you remember the baby? You know, the baby of the family.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. What's your situation now? Where are you living right now, and who's with you today?
I'm living in Holtzville. We have a home there. My husband is with me, and he's we've been married 36 years.
God bless.
Yes, yeah.
How did you meet your husband?
I met him at a barbecue. A good friend of his and a good friend of mine who are married had this barbecue from like old friends of the neighborhood, and he thought I was a wife of somebody there. And we mutually knew all these different people, but for some reason, we never met. I was going out with someone else, he, you know, whatever, we were busy in our lives. And it was July 4th, 1972. And we're at this barbecue, and half the day went by, and we were all sitting, hanging out with all our friends. And somehow he finally found out that I was Rosemary and I wasn't married to anybody here. So we started talking, and that was it. That was the rest of the
barbecue in where?
Oh, in Uniondale, where my friends lived at the time. Yes, yeah.
And you have, do you have children?
I have 3 sons. 2 are married, and one, actually one was going to be getting married in July, and they just broke up.
Tell me the names of the children, and tell me something about each one.
Okay. David is my oldest. He's 34. And he is a production assistant for a production company called Rhythm and News in Los Angeles. And he's the digital coordinator for their video, whatever type of thing. And he's a musician. So he's been in California for 5 years. He went to pursue his music career and then ended up with this job, but he still does a band, and they're putting out an album, and they also went to a company for licensing of their songs in different programs and so on. So that's David. Then we have Bobby is 33, and he's a teacher at Mount Sinai. He teaches 6th and 7th grade band. He's married for the second time. He has an 8-year-old son from his first marriage, and he has 2 little ones from his second marriage. And they're precious. I babysit for them during the week, and I love my children, but my grandchildren are just amazing. You know,
your brothers have the music gene.
They do, really. And my youngest son, Michael, is a high school teacher, an English high school teacher in Deer Park, and they just had their first child in July. So he's 5 months old, Michael. I babysit for him also. And, as I'm saying this, I'm remembering at the time when they were looking for jobs after college, I wanted them to come to Brentwood, but both of them were getting married at the time. And the only positions were, subbing or permanent sub, and they weren't sure of a job. And it kind of broke my heart because they couldn't come to work in Brentwood. And Brentwood was such a unique place,
Absolutely.
So, but they were fortunate to get jobs in other districts right away. So that's where they went.
Tell me about the personalities or the qualities, the talents that you see, or the interests even at this age of your grandchildren. Tell me what you see.
They're very, even at their young ages, they're already musical, my oldest one, my 8-year-old Christopher, is just a terrific kid, and they all love music, but he reads well. Being a reading teacher, that's very exciting. He's in 3rd grade, so and they're all the personalities are good. There's just I guess I'm a grandmother, so you see the personalities there. The happiness to see a person. There's just that nice. Just a sense of warmth, that familiar sense of family and so on.
There are certain qualities that your family obviously has, and they are very much people. You are a people person.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Very social, very open to people and to listen and
Yes.
to talk. And the grandchildren are fortunate to have that example.
Yeah.
You have a lot of contact with them? Do you see them often?
Yes, all the time. Well, I babysit the three of them during the week. I babysit like 3 days, one for my two little ones of my son Bobby, and then my other little guy. I do 2 days for him. You know.
Have you been to Italy at all?
No, my husband and I. He's Irish, so we always said that someday we would love to go to Ireland and Italy and just see those two countries. You
And
know.
where is your husband from? What part of Ireland is he
My mother-in-law, I believe, was from Cork.
from?
I believe that's where she was from. Yeah.
So someday,
She had gone quite a few times. And
Okay.
yeah. I have a beautiful Irish tea set that she brought back to me. And a Balik butter dish. It's a cottage, a thatched cottage. And just, you know, but she loved it. She really loved it there.
do you know anything about what your grandparents did before they came here? What their life was like, what their work was like? Did they, well, let you answer the question. I don't want to give you prompts.
My grandparents, I'm just trying to remember.
On either side of the family.
Well, before they came, but the ones that lived in Italy,
Yes.
I really don't know that much
Okay.
about what they did, you know.
Okay, they all came from Naples,
Right.
from that area.
Yes. Hmm.
But you don't really know whether they were farmers or whether they were business people. Or,
Oh, no, they weren't business
Artisans.
people. They were more, they worked with their hands, you know, that type of thing. Sewing, you know, things like that,
Yes.
you know.
What did your mother enjoy doing, even though she probably didn't have a lot of time to do it? What gave her pleasure?
My mother was a very unique person. She really was. She was 8th grade educated, but she was the smartest woman. I'm really and truly. Her math was incredible. She read well. She was always up on the news, and of course, she loved politics. You know, my mother was right there. You know, especially with my brother. And so, her biggest love was her family, of course. You know, but she was always interested in what was new. She didn't just sit in the house and not do. You know, she was always involved in something. She also did, you know, knitting and the sewing type of thing.
And what about your dad, Rose? What about your father? An earliest memory that you have of your father?
My father was, I mean, I love my mother. My father was an incredible man. What an easygoing man he was. Really and truly. He was the first, not the word metrosexual. He was like, not the typical European man that was a macho man and the, you know, your job is here and my job is here. My mother cooked and he did. He was there. He helped with children at such an early age. You know, it was so incredible to me. And he always made time for us. And my father, because there were so many of us, I mean, he always worked 2 jobs and sometimes a job on a weekend. Yet there were times we sat, we had dinner with him. My mother would have something special for him, and there was never a time where he'd say, "Oh, I'm tired, leave me alone," whatever. He was there always, you know, with the hugs.
You say sometimes he had 2 jobs at once. What did he do?
My father was a window trimmer for Whalen Drug Store for 42 years. And he loved it. He would decorate windows all over the country. He actually went, he drove once. And because he backed down a big hill, he stopped driving. My father would walk from Ozone Park to Brooklyn. He took trains out to Montauk to a Whalen's that was out there, Jersey, Pennsylvania, and he could tell you how to get there. That was the amazing part about my father. He was just incredible. And he loved what he did. He loved it.
But so, did he work for anyone other than Whalen at the same time?
He worked for Whalen, and then he worked for a gentleman in Harlem He worked in a drugstore as a helper, you know, and I can think of his name, he was a wonderful man. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. If I knew that all these questions were going to be asked, I would try to get all this information in my head.
What you remember, you remember, Rose.
He was a wonderful man, the druggist. Potato, Mr. Potato, his name was. And he loved my father.
Was this an Italian name? Was he an Italian?
You know what? He was a black man.
I was going to ask you. You mentioned
he was
Harlem.
not. Yes, he was a black man. Okay. Loved my father. My father loved him, and there was just that's the way it was.
Yes.
And my father never had intolerance. Was never like that.
If you were to tell me one of the most important lessons that your family experience has taught you, what would it be?
Acceptance.
Okay.
Acceptance, tolerance, if you want to use that word. Many differences in our family and friends and things that have gone on over the years, but you never just turn your back. They never turned their backs on anybody. They were incredible people, and I'm sure you've heard other people say about their parents, but that's where I learned how to live.
Forgive me for saying this, but I infer from what you're saying that you haven't turned your back on your brother either, even though he has taken a different path and
right.
Made some choices of his own.
Right. And we've always, over the years, we've helped him and stuff, but he's created some problems. But no, he's still a human being.
Were there other adult influences besides mom and dad that were formative in your life?
In the family?
Well, significant adults that you came in contact with or you saw on a regular basis while you were growing up that had left their mark on you, that had an important role to play in your life. Now, besides mom and dad, there may have been aunts and uncles, or there may have been family friends or people who you called Uncle so-and-so or Aunt so-and-so.
Yes, yes.
I don't know if anyone fits that.
There was one aunt in particular who was just dynamite. My Aunt Camille was an amazing, amazing human being. And she was someone who was like that, very accepting, never complained, a wonderful cook, a wonderful seamstress. And she was, really very special.
Was she a friend or a family, or was she?
She's an aunt, my mother's sister. Yes, yeah.
Who had the greatest influence in affecting the choice that you made for a career? Was that your own idea, or did somebody plant that seed?
Well, I'll tell you, it started when I was going through school. I went through all Catholic schools. And as I was growing up and went to high school, I was starting in grammar school and then up into high school to make a decision that kind of got me to where I was eventually. But I went into the convent. I became a Dominican sister of Amityville. And, went through school and so on. So I was a nun for 5 years. And I always loved children. I always wanted to teach. So that's what I did. And when I left the convent, it was because I was... Do you want me to continue? Well, part of the reason I left the convent was because I felt so restricted. The reason I went in is because I loved God and I wanted to, bring God to people and help people and all that. That was always part of my makeup, helping. And in one of the places I was a nun, there was a child there whose parents had gone through a divorce, and the mother would talk to me, and I mean, I didn't have experience in the world. I was like 20 by this time, and it helped her to talk, and I felt good about that. So I had gone, back to the convent one day, and I was told, "Sister, you can't do that. You can't get involved in people's lives." And I was like, "I don't think so," So I really had very strong doubts at that point. Then I transferred to another school, and you could do that at the time. After 1 year, you could do that. So I did that. And in this parish, Curie of Ars, and the first one was Notre Dame in Hyde Park, and this one was Curie of Ars in Merrick. I loved my class. They were precious, precious kids. I was third grade at this point. The first one I was in second grade. But anyway, I had this little boy, Stephen Conroy. I'll never forget his name. And this is quite a few years ago. His mother came to me one day, pregnant with her 9th child. And she said, "Sister, I don't know what to do. I'm having this child, of course, but Father yelled at me because I want to use birth control." And this is way back, and I firmly believed in this. That's just my personal, feeling on it. I said, "Only God knows. Only God can judge you." I said, "You do what you feel is right. If you need to do something like that, you're raising 9 children, 9 gifts you have here. And if you can't have any more, then you have to use your own conscience and don't worry about that, And I was so upset by that. And I said, it's wrong to do that. It's wrong to do that to people and make them live in fear, Anyway, so I left the convent. And then...
What year did you leave the convent?
1968. And then I came home, and by that time, my parents moved from Ozone Park to Brentwood.
Okay.
And my brother lived in Brentwood already at the time. So they moved in 65. I came out in 68, lived with them, worked, finished up some schooling that I needed. And then I started in January of 70, and I took over for Florence Birkin in Oak Park. She went on a sabbatical. So I was with Jack Hoffman, and loved it. I had little kindergartners. And that was my first step into Brentwood. And then that year, in September, I started at Loretta Park. And I was there my first 7 years. So I got accessed and had to go to Twin Pines for 1 year. And by that time, I was on my 3rd child. This was like years later, I should say. And because I got married in 73. So then my 3rd child, I know if you want me to continue. Do you want to ask questions?
Yeah,
I'll go on for hours. I'm
That's
terrible.
Okay. That's all right. I do want to ask you a couple of other questions in between where we are.
Okay.
We jumped to where you're coming to Brentwood, but
Right.
to go back a little bit. Did you have unforgettable teachers of your own while you were going through school?
Yes, I
Did you
did.
stay in touch with some of them afterward? Or?
A few of them. In
Okay.
fact, there's a number of them that I do see. And
Thanks.
one in particular, Sister Joan McDonald, her name was Timothy Ann at the time from elementary school. I still see her every once in a
I
while.
wanted to ask you if when you left the convent, if that was, reading your body language, it almost seemed like a relief to you because you had made the big decision. That
Yes.
It was a weight off your heart.
Hmm.
It had to be a difficult decision for you.
It was. I had talked to a priest about it and, prayed and all that stuff. And it was a hard decision to make, but when I made the decision, I felt that I could still do God's will outside of the convent. And I loved my years there. They were wonderful years.
I just want to comment that you probably know this as well as I do, but I have met many people that have taught in Brentwood that are formerly members of religious life of
Yes.
one kind or another.
Hmm.
It's a spiritual calling, what you did as a teacher. Do you remember your first paying job ever?
My first paying job was when I was in high school. I was 14 years old. And I worked at Embassy Laundry in Jamaica. So I went to Dominican Commercial High School. After school, I would go there. And I actually did, billing and things like that, that office work type of thing. And I'd work after school, and then I'd work on Saturdays, and in the summers I worked there all the
What
time.
was your favorite subject in school when you were a student?
English.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Did you have a least favorite subject at
Math.
that time? Okay. And your mother excelled at math.
Yes,
too.
she was really good.
What about after school? What would you have done just when you were hanging out? Was there something you enjoyed after school?
Well, we had a park right down the street from us. And in those days, you could go down to the park, hang out with your friends, play ball, go on the swings.
Yeah.
It was an amazing childhood. Now I wouldn't let my own kids out to go that far, But
Did you have a favorite season then? Oh, and is it the same now, or is it different? Do you have a different?
I guess my favorite season would be, I guess, spring, summer, more so.
I asked this question
because I love nature.
I was
So
going to say, I asked this question to those of us who have been up here in Brentwood, where we have 4 seasons. In some part of the country, people only have, it seems like one season,
Right.
to me.
yes,
But you said your favorite was summer?
when everything's grown, when you see everything, the trees and the flowers and all that type of stuff.
Why don't you walk us through all the schools that you've attended and the certifications or degrees that you attained as a result?
Okay. I went to St. Elizabeth's Elementary School. And after that, I went to Dominican Commercial High School. Then I went to Malloy College, undergraduate, Hofstra for my master's. And
what was it was a master's in
reading. Yes.
So
And my BA was in English,
okay.
from Malloy.
If you had taken a different path, what other career do you think you would have enjoyed?
Nursing.
Really?
Mm-hmm. When I was in high school, I was a member of what they called the Antoinettes. And they were girls that we used to help out the nursing sisters of the sick poor. And we'd go around them to the houses and so on, and especially on weekends. And the only thing that stopped me was we were going to hospice people most of the part, later on. Who knew later on in life I was going to be using that myself and my family? Oh, sorry. Anyway, I guess part of my thing in my family is I've been a caregiver for a long, long time for different people, So that was my old nursing thing. And people kid me about my ambulette. My car is an ambulette because I'm always taking somebody to the doctor or to the hospital to this or that, kind of thing. But nursing, I always admired nurses, and that I would have loved to have done too.
Now, to go back to where we left off, you said you came to Brentwood, and that's when you began teaching there. And was it the early 70s?
1970, January of 70 is when I first actually got into the district.
And the reason, quite obviously, is because there were roots in this community. And
Yes.
your brother was here.
Yes.
And there were a family.
Absolutely.
Okay. Did you look anywhere else for a teaching position, or you didn't?
Actually, I didn't. It was just, I worked, when I first came home, I worked in the summers with the special ed program that was held at the time at South Middle. They used to do all the special ed kids, and it was in conjunction with the town, Howie Brodsky and all that. So I did that in the summers.
And Brentwood had a reputation far and wide for the exceptional program.
Oh, incredible. But I loved, of course, being in Brentwood. I loved it, and then I was subbing.
Who interviewed you when you first came?
Oh my goodness.
Or did you have an interview?
I'm trying to remember.
Maybe the question should be, who was the first person you met?
I think it was Adrian Eastman. I think it was. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly who it was.
Do you remember a question Adrian asked? Huh?
Oh my goodness.
If you don't, you don't. It's okay. I'm just pulling these out of my hat.
Okay.
What was your first impression, at any rate, when you came here, you looked around, you had a feeling?
I thought I was in heaven. Honestly, I'm not just saying that. I loved the minute I walked into the first building in Brentwood. The people, even in the administration building, the old administration building, it was just incredible to me. Everybody was on your side. No one was trying to do a gotcha. You know what I'm saying? Everybody was there and supportive. That's what I noticed most of all. It was wonderful.
When you came and it was determined that you would be teaching here, did you have a goal that you envisioned yourself achieving? Is there something that you wanted to try to achieve?
I just wanted to help kids.
You certainly achieved that.
Learn and love learning. you know, that type of thing. I don't know if I had a grand plan.
Well,
Just
no, let's stop right there
Okay.
and say you wanted to pass on a love of reading and learning.
oh
Did you see examples of your success with individual students that you?
oh I did. Oh, I did. And also see, in teaching, part of my teaching was always the values too. You can't do one without the other. I never felt that way. And that was important to teach that, the sharing, the give and take, and again, tolerance, you know. And I love that with my kids. I did, you know, it's just,
I remember sitting with your brother and talking with Tony about Brentwood being a microcosm of the whole country. And he said something to me that I never forgot, because this is years ago now we had this conversation. He said, "No, John," he says, "I don't look at it that way. I look at it as a microcosm of the whole world." And I thought, how right he was. How many language groups are there today? It's a different Brentwood today than it was when you started.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Major difference. Yes. Yeah. I saw it over 30 years that I was in Brentwood. You know, you could see the big difference. Just in the backgrounds of kids, you know, there's so much more a need, it seems. And also the levels of education that are coming in. They start, you know, a lot of these kids don't start school until they're 8, you know, that come here from other countries. So that's hard. That gives them like, it's a step back for them. They have to start really from scratch. But I always, those were my darlings, were the kids that had the hardest time. You know, that's how I was, you know. I mean, I loved all the kids, but the little ones that had to work that much harder.
There were youngsters who came from countries where they had never been in school.
Yes.
Or they had never worn shoes.
Oh, yes. Oh, my.
So the adjustment culturally, they didn't have a culture.
Right.
Tell me
I just felt sometimes they needed to learn life rather than math. That to me was the important part of them, giving them in that 6.5 hours of the day, they were in my little family, you know, kind of thing. It was a living.
Rose, the state exams don't grade that, though, do they?
No, they don't.
With No Child Left Behind and with all of the teaching for the test, that's not
terrible.
going to be on the test.
And people that I know now that are still working, younger people that I know who are master teachers, are upset with that. And they are wonderful teachers. They love what they do. They do it extremely well. They can't stand worrying about these test scores. And that's, we used to say that years ago, when I was still a reading consultant, that this is wrong. It's so wrong.
Years ago, I remember a book that was titled "If Teachers Were Free." They're still not free, are they?
No.
To exercise that genius for relating with children and teaching life and teaching the whole child, we used to say.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Tell me about the activities, the programs, the subjects, the various investments that you have made in the classroom and with kids.
During my teaching years,
like your teaching years,
what are
the activities or programs or assignments that you were given? Grade levels, perhaps, various activities you might have been involved, positions that you taught.
Oh, you mean my actual teaching times, so on. Well, I was, I started out in kindergarten, and then I was a first grade teacher, you know, for many years, like altogether, different places, 10 years. Third grade I taught, and then I loved when I was teaching for 15 years in the classroom, and then became a reading consultant for the last 15 years. And I loved working with all grade levels. They were wonderful. And there were times when they would have us go and, well, actually, after I retired, I used to go and do the nice slots over in South Middle, in fact. And that grade level was so sweet. The kids, the 7th and 8th graders, were incredible, you know. But I love doing everything with the kids, and I always tried to, whatever we did in school, any kind of activities, special activities, you know, the nighttime activities. We'd have pajama night, reading night, author night, those types of things I always did, you know. Is that answering the question?
Sure.
Well enough?
Did you have a favorite year of all of the years that you put in? How many years did you teach, by the way?
I taught 15 years in Brentwood and 2 years, of course, in Catholic school.
Yes.
But 15 years in Brentwood. I loved first grade of all the grades. That I did 10 years of first grade. But I loved them all. I just, you know, I love the kids. I really did. I don't think I could teach high school kids. I don't think so. I've never had that opportunity. But the little ones, you just, I guess maybe because I needed to be appreciated also, like they accepted my caring, you know, kind of thing. And, they were, you know, wonderful, really.
I think you probably answered this question already. But you can tell me if you want to change anything you said, because a question that I ask people has to do with not their description or their contract, but the contract said you're being hired to do this, do that. I ask people how they define their own purpose, getting up every day and coming into work. And I think you probably have answered it when you said to teach them to read, to teach them about life.
Mm-hmm.
That probably stands as the best answer for that question.
Yeah. To change their lives, you know, to give them some strength to move on. You know.
Do you, because you still live on Long Island, do you ever run into people who remember you from the classroom?
Every once in a while I do, yes. In fact, there was one of my third graders, he's now a father of grown kids, who, and another girl that still we correspond, and they send me pictures of their kids and stuff, you know, at Christmas time and so on. And every once in a while you'll meet someone at the bank and I'll say, "Oh my God, how are you, Mrs. Mendez? How are you?" You know, your kids. One daughter, Andrea Mendez, became a lawyer, and it was like, oh, how wonderful, you know, and just so many different things. It's wonderful, you know, to remember.
Were you a member of the BTA?
Yes.
Were you ever active?
I was a delegate.
You were.
First couple of years, I was a delegate. And then once I started having children, I really didn't do much of that except do phone calling, you know, for any kind of, you know, vote that was coming up, either with the board or in politics, you know, whatever was going on. I always went to the NYSED office or BTA office or whatever. And I did that type of stuff.
Being at the elementary school, you might not have the same experience that somebody at another level might have had. But I want to ask you the question, have you ever been afraid to come to work?
No.
Okay.
No, I can't ever.
What kind of things, while you were teaching, got under your skin, made you angry?
Should I say administrators sometimes that just, you know, irked me for one reason or another, you know, fairness or the decisions that were made with certain kids or whatever.
Was there a person, Rose, that was far and away more helpful to you than anyone else when you came to Brentwood and you began your career here? Or were there a number of people who were helpful?
You know, do you remember Ruth Cummings when I first came to?
I know the name.
Yeah, she was a sweetheart. She was very, very helpful. And one person I have to mention, not because her daughter is sitting here, but Mary Christiane, she was the sweetest person. Your mother on the phone, always, whenever I subbed. She was so good to me in all those years of subbing and so on. She was just dynamite.
That was very much part of the fabric of what we referred to as the Brentwood family, wasn't it?
Oh, my goodness. You see, people in other districts, I mean, this is including my own children's districts and so on, when I would tell them stories about Brentwood, and they've heard it from other people on the outside, they said, Mom, that's unbelievable. I said, the spirit in Brentwood, and I mean that from all levels. I'm talking about the kids, the teachers, the parents, the board. I mean, this doesn't exist anywhere else. My son in Deer Park High School, he's a chief, he's a delegate there. And he's very involved, with everything. And he can't believe the spirit and how supportive the board was, during those years when I was, still here. It doesn't exist anywhere else. It truly doesn't. And that's why Brentwood is so unique. And it's something I would never regret being here all those years. And that's the only regret I have, that my sons could not experience that, But I have a couple of nieces, of course, that are here in the district, so I'm happy for that. But,
I know exactly what you're saying. Why then did you get to a point, or how was it that you came to a place where you said, I think it's time for me. I have to do something else.
Yeah. It wasn't the kids. It wasn't the kids that I wanted to leave. It was the nonsense, some of the nonsense, and some of the state testing things, and then it was like the responsibility. And I loved mentoring the teachers. I felt like a mentor also for my teachers. I really did. The young teachers would come to me, and that was also a wonderful part of my being in Brentwood, truly.
Working with younger teachers.
Oh yeah, it was great, And they used to call me the Queen Mother. We used to kid around about that all the time. I'm in touch with them, the young ones, and that was the best part. But it was never my job. It was never my kids. It was all the other rigmarole that was going on, and I didn't agree with some things, And I thought, you know what? It's time. I'm getting older. My kids are having kids. Maybe I'll babysit. Bob and I wanted to travel a little bit, that type of thing. And he was already, retired from the police department. Then he worked for Federal Express for 10 years, and he was retired from there. And I said, it's time. I think maybe I'll do it. So that was it.
Where was Bob a police officer?
He was a police officer in New York City Police.
Okay. So he had a commute.
He commuted. Yeah, he worked 4 to 12s most of the time. And his last 6 years, he worked in Queens Central Booking. So it was 21 years altogether that he retired. And then he was still young, so he went to work again for Federal Express.
You figured while you're still young and you could enjoy time together,
yes.
You wanted to spend more time
right.
with him.
It's true.
Children. Okay.
Yeah, life is too short.
Was there an accomplishment other than the things that you have mentioned, which are certainly memorable? But is there another professional accomplishment of which you are very proud, or something that you would point to with satisfaction at least? I'm not trying to put you on.
I didn't concentrate on myself that much, or trying to bring attention to myself. I tried not to.
But when you're out and you look back and you see the spread of the years and the things that you've been involved in, I know there are things that you feel good about, that you were glad you were there, perhaps even you were put there at that time to see this through, or to help this one person, or to do this piece. And I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about it, if you can remember.
Yeah, I feel
there's so many. Your last building assignment was where?
Twin Pines.
Okay. And who did you work with there?
Alex Werner and Bob McCarthy was the assistant principal. He was new then.
Did you, as a teacher, ever do second jobs? You did. You were a mom, so you were very involved.
No, I was. Yes, yeah, definitely. I was.
Do you remember what your beginning salary was before taxes?
$9,000.
Okay.
Was the beginning. Yes.
Well, you have a wonderful story that you've told. I wonder if you could say in so many words, what was the most fun that you had on the job?
The most fun. Oh.
what was your favorite time of the day or your favorite time of the year working with the different grades? You started with the very, very little ones.
Yes.
And what was
yes.
the highest grade you taught?
I went up to third grade.
Third grade.
That was
Okay.
it. And then when I was doing the reading, I had up to fifth grade.
Okay.
That type of thing.
Okay.
But
Is there one thing that you could point to, say, I used to love such and such doing so and so? Or it was just the experience as a whole?
well, just the whole experience, I guess, and I guess the loving the kids and the camaraderie. I thought with all the teachers and so on was wonderful.
What did you miss when you first left? When you first handed in your papers and retired? By the way, the date of your retirement was what?
So they go by July 1st,
The official.
2001,
Okay,
actually.
2000.
Yeah.
So when you first left and you went through that summer and then the fall came around and the leaves
It was
fell.
strange. I had the feeling I was going back, and sometimes I'd say, like, there were kids I worried about. Like, I hope that they're doing all right. I hope well, I don't know if I even should say this, but as the reading consultant, we used to make the classes and all that so on. And there were certain kids you knew needed to be with certain people. So that was an accomplishment I felt that I could do without,
That's very personal, and I can understand. There you are as almost a caregiver again,
Yes.
providing for each individual.
Right. Right.
And I know what you don't miss. You didn't miss the nonsense.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Was there anything that you would like to have accomplished that you weren't able to for whatever reason?
Well, at one point, I wanted to become a mentor for the new teachers. And I had offered that up many years before they started with mentors, because I wanted to train them officially. And when I retired is when they first started mentors. It was like right after that. And I wasn't, available, I guess, if you want to call it that. But in general, I loved what I did, and I was never one to, I know it sounds crazy, but I didn't want the spotlight on me. You know what I'm saying? But I loved what I did. And that's the only thing I can really say. I loved what I did. I loved knowing that kids could learn and giving them the time, the hug that they didn't get at home. Nowadays, you can't even hug kids, it's like crazy, really.
While your brother Anthony was on the board, and I think it was for over 40 years, I think something like
About
that,
that,
served
yeah.
the community. He oversaw a revolution in public education in Brentwood, and he was pretty much in the crow's seat to watch all of these things evolve. But the notion of an extended family was really his gift, his contribution to the community. I'm sure he would have ideas if he were sitting here as part of this conversation, but I can't ask him, so I'm going to ask you. If you could wave a magic wand and make 3 changes in public education today that are sorely needed, what would you most see the need to change?
I would say, well, to my liking, it hasn't changed yet. Class size, major.
Meaning smaller classes.
Very small classes. Testing, is crazy.
Meaning there are too many tests.
Too much of that. It's ridiculous. And I think there should be educators on school boards, if that's an okay suggestion. I mean, that to me would be something.
Mm-hmm. If you were to complete this phrase after your 15 years of having lived it, Brentwood's teachers are, how would you complete it?
Brentwood's teachers are well-rounded and gifted.
And suppose we were talking about the students now from K through 12, and we would say Brentwood students are?
Brentwood students are Brentwood students are like sponges. You know, they just pick up so much, and
that answers it.
you know,
That answers it
yeah.
very well. Absolutely. And I think that's a reason for people to be very careful about what they say and do as role models for these youngsters. If you were to give advice based on all your valuable experience and the insights that you have brought to the classroom, if you were to give, as a mentor, to give your advice to new teachers, what would be some of the most important pieces of advice that you would offer? And we're hoping, by the way, that someday this is going to be seen by people coming into the profession.
My first thing, and I always put this first, was always look for the humanity in that child. Always first. You know, that's the most important thing. Before you start doing anything else with that child, look at that humanness in them and appreciate that. Some people just don't appreciate that either. I mean, you know, we all know that there are people who are in the job who are absolutely wonderful at what they do, and others that forget the humanity, you know, and I think that's one of the prime things that we have to focus on.
How would you like to be remembered? You know that people are going to remember you. They will think of you in a certain context, but how would you like to be?
I'd like to be remembered as someone who shared her life and gave kindness, you know, and someone who really was concerned about each of the people that I came into contact with, you know, and made a difference. I would hope I would have given something, left them with something, some little piece of me in each of them.
I'm sure you've done that time and time again. What haven't we talked about that you want to make sure we get in here? Remember, this is for your children and your grandchildren and your family. What do we want to say that we haven't already covered?
I feel like such a dummy because I can't, thinking when I leave, I'll be thinking of all the different things I could say, you know.
We're both going to do that because I'm going to feel like the same dummy because I say, oh, I should have asked. But this is the moment we have, and it's yours to use in any way that you would like to. And if we're finished, we are delightfully finished. And I'm very, very happy to have had the opportunity to talk with you and get your take on what your experience in the Brentwood School District was.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.